is going on, all you wonderful A-Plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again with another review for you guys, but this time we are taking a look at a new show that just premiered yesterday as the day I'm recording this, but probably 2 days ago of the time this video comes out. And that is, of course, My Adventures with Superman. Yeah, sorry, I pointed the wrong way. I always do that when it comes to the cameras. Like, I think I'm going one way, but I'm actually going the other. But yeah, My Adventures with Superman. Show just premiered, and my overall thoughts, very solid so far. Very, very solid premiere. Now, when it comes to the Superman mythos, I think this show definitely takes a very anime-esque approach when it comes to the visuals of Superman. And not just with the art style, but just like in terms of like the transformation. I'm sure you guys have seen it. There's an interesting transformation sequence of Kal-El getting his Superman suit, and very, very anime-like. And I don't mean that in a bad way. In fact, I actually do really like, if we're going more into the anime aspects of this episode, I actually really do like those. And I think there's a lot of that, not just in terms of the transformation, but I think a lot of that in terms of the character design and overall art style and aesthetic. I'd say the only thing that kind of makes it not feel like a traditional anime is that, like, I feel like when it comes to kind of traditional animes, every shot almost feels like, or every frame that you see almost feels like something straight from of a manga, like in terms of the way it's framed. And I think that's like kind of the main difference when it comes to Western and Eastern cartoons, is like the way Western cartoons tend to frame it. They tend to frame it like kind of almost sometimes like if it was a live action movie, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's like the one thing that kind of gives this away of not being like Japanese anime, basically. It's the fact that this very much is framed like a traditional cartoon. That's always kind of like the main difference I've noticed personally. I'm sure there's other differences that people are gonna comment below, and I'm sure other people are gonna say that I'm just straight up wrong. It's just anime, it doesn't matter. And I mean, it doesn't. You know what? I don't know. I feel like the definition of anime has just changed so much over the years. And I mean, when you look it up, literally the definition is just animation. But regardless, the way people say, like, whether or not anime refers to a style or anime refers to, whether or not it was actually made in Japan. At this point, it feels like the argument is all over the place. I don't have an opinion one way or another. The one thing I can definitely say is that the art style feels very much like anime, but the framing feels very Western. So now that I got that whole thing out of the way, let's talk about the show itself, starting with the characters. So Superman, Clark Kent, they got him really good in this. I really like that we are, unlike Superman and Lois, we're following a young Clark Kent, one who has just moved to Metropolis for the first time. Basically, kind of on the same boat as Dean Cain's Superman in Lois and Clark, back from the 90s, I believe that's when that show was. So we're in kind of that time period. He just moved to Metropolis. He just got an internship at the Daily Planet, which is something a little bit new when it comes to the Superman lore. Because normally, I've never seen a Superman comic, or maybe there's been comics of it, I don't know, but I've never seen like a Superman adaptation where his first time at the Daily Planet is at an intern. So that is one thing that is kind of new in this. But it's not just him, it's him and Jimmy Olsen. The two of them are roommates, which I believe there were some early comic books where that was a thing. Definitely correct me if I'm wrong about that in the comments below. But then we also have Lois Lane, who of course is an intern that has worked at the planet for it's implied to have been at least a few months, and she is a bit of a troublemaker in the sense that she goes for a story even though that's technically not her job. You have Perry White, who is very annoyed about this, very much. He just wants her to do her job as an intern, which is, the whole make me coffee and maybe print some names for people or something. I don't know. I think there was like a task that he wanted them to do, but of course, Lois Lane doesn't tell them to do it. She instead, uses Clark and Jimmy Olsen to help with her story. Something I really do like about the dynamic of Lois and Clark here is I do like seeing them kind of fall for each other as Lois and Clark, and not having it be Clark falling for Lois, but Lois falling for Superman. I am so sick of that dynamic really sick of it, even though it hasn't been overdone. Sorry, I guess I just don't like the dynamic. I guess saying I'm sick of it implies that that's always the case, but in this particular case, it's not. But regardless, they clearly have a thing for each other. They're just very, shy about it, I'll say. It hasn't gone anywhere yet. It's just, as far as the two of them are concerned, it's a little bit of a crush. We also have Jimmy, and I love this version of Jimmy because he is basically like just a huge, very much like Amelia from Power Rangers Dino Fury. He's super into the supernatural and just the unknown. He's almost as if like they took Amelia from Dino Fury and then just like combined her with Chloe from Smallville, and just that's the character you get. That's Jimmy. They basically took two female characters from two different shows and they used them to make Jimmy Olsen. I absolutely loved. I think he was probably my favorite character in this show. I love the energy that he has, and I love characters that believe in the supernatural and just the paranormal and all that. So Jimmy so far is definitely the highlight of the show for me. But of course, Superman is nothing without his villains, and that was like one major thing I was very curious about going into the show, is what kind of villains would he be facing? Because when it came to some of the ones that we saw in the previews, I had no idea who some of these guys were. I'm like really confused most of the time looking at these. So I'm like, okay, don't recognize them. Let's see if these are, because it might be that they didn't have certain likeness or rights to certain characters, so they had to be a little more creative and maybe make original villains. That's what I thought going into this, but it turns out no. So far, the villains that we have been introduced to are villains who have existed in the comic books. The main two being, of course, Livewire and Deathstroke. That is right. We got Deathstroke in the show, and it took me a minute to recognize that's who the character was. I should have gotten it when I saw the color scheme, which is of course black and orange, and the hair, which is of course just like Deathstroke's, white. Not gray, just straight up white. Now here's the other funny giveaway that I love, the foreshadowing that it's like the writers kind of just nudging to the fans watching the show, not the general audience, but the fans, like just kind of going, you notice how his hair's covering one of his eyes? You guys know what that means? I love that. We don't get much of him, but he is a very young version of Slade Wilson, which I guess makes sense because these are the, of course, early days of Clark Kent, so we're getting the early days of Slade Wilson. His design, let me put it this way, I don't love it, but I don't hate it, It might take me a few episodes to get used to, but I could see this definitely growing on me. Livewire, to me, just looks, mostly comic book accurate. It's just, they updated it for the aesthetic of this show, basically, but it really doesn't seem like they've changed too much about her overall, appearance. She seems very much the way she was in the comic books. Yeah, so I got no complaints when it comes to the villains. When it comes to the animation, because we do got to talk about that, because this is, of course, an animated series. I'd say it's not amazing. It's not going to blow anyone's mind, I don't think, but it is good. It is very solid. It gets the job done, and it leads to some really cool action scenes. We have Superman, of course, rescuing Lois and Jimmy Olsen, like always. In the comic books, you have Clark Kent finding convenient ways to not be around when Superman's around, but no one questioning it just so far, that is. I think overall, the action animation is really good. I think one thing I got to give a real good shout out to is definitely the sound design. I think whenever Superman is rushing from one place to another, there's always that kind of sonic boom sound effect, very similar to the one they use in Superman and Lois, and I absolutely love it. It's just it adds a good level of momentum. And, I'm intrigued by the ending, because we get a end scene where we are introduced to who the characters who I'm sure are going to be the main antagonists. So we do know that, of course, we got Livewire and Deathstroke, and then standing behind Deathstroke, we have two people. One of them is clearly Amanda Waller. Really excited. She's one of my favorite characters, so anytime I get to see her in a DC project, count me in. And we have, I'm not sure who the person on the right of her is. I have a few theories that I'm just going to list out right now, because it could be a lot of people. So it could be Rick Flag, it could be be Rick Flag Sr., you know, his dad, who's going to be in Creature Commandos later this year or next year. I can't remember when that show's coming out. It could also be Commander Steel, Citizen Steel, because they were both like part of the military. But my other theory, my biggest one currently, is I think it's a good chance that that's going to be Sam Lane, because we know that Lois's dad, you know, in the comic books and in Superman and Lois also, you know, worked at the DOD. So I'm wondering if this is like a thing where it's like the DOD is working alongside with either, I assume it's going to be Argus that Amanda Waller is going to be the head of. I highly doubt it's going to be Cadmus, because I know like in Justice League the animated series she was like the head of Cadmus, but of course I think in the comic books she's the head of Argus. So I assume it's going to be like, you know, Argus that's going to be behind all this. But, you know, and it also is probably why I think Rick Flags would be the best bet, because Rick Flags does work for Argus in the comic books, and I think that's probably the best bet of who that person is, but we'll have to wait and find out. I'm sure it's probably already listed, like they're not even trying to hide who it is. I just haven't bothered to actually look it up. But yeah, guys, super solid episode overall. I know I didn't really get much into the plot, but that's because, I mean, there really isn't that much to say about it. It's a very basic plot. Weapons go missing, Superman and Lois track it down, and Jimmy Olsen, of course, track it down using journalistic instincts, but then of course when they get there it hits the fan and Superman has to bail them out. You kind of get that formula for both episode 1 and episode 2, and I think it works pretty well. I think the dialogue is extremely well written. You know, there's a lot of witty dialogue that, you know, will give me a chuckle here and there. I didn't really laugh out loud too much while watching this, but I definitely got a few chuckles here and there. So the writing is definitely solid when it comes to both the plot and the overall like story that they're going for. And yeah, I think overall very solid. I'd give this a solid B. You know, nothing amazing. The only reason I'm not giving it an A is because there's nothing like amazing in the episode. I don't think anything really caught my attention to you know, like there's nothing that made me go, oh, I need to see the next episode now. No, I was like, it's a week away from now. I can wait. I'm not in a hurry, if that makes sense. But I did enjoy it, and I look forward to watching the next episode. So I give it a solid B, you know, B overall. Really good. Definitely recommend checking it out. But of course, guys, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think. So definitely let me know your thoughts of this or of these episodes, because of course this was episodes 1 and 2. Let me know your thoughts on these episodes in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. But of course, guys, above all, don't forget to keep it A+, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.